It's never easy to watch someone walk away, especially when you know it's not the end they wanted. Leah Hawthorne never asked for much just to be seen, to be loved, to matter in a family that never truly saw her. But as the door slammed shut behind her on the coldest night of the year, she knew, for the first time, that she wasn't the daughter she thought she was. She didn't cry when the door closed. Maybe it was the shock of it all. Maybe it was the sheer numbness of the cold. Minus 34 degrees Celsius wind biting through her jacket. Every breath felt like inhaling shards of glass. The snow crunched under her boots as she stood there, staring at the dimly lit house she would never enter again. That's when she realized it wasn't her family anymore. They had already decided who they wanted her to be, and it wasn't the person standing in front of them. This is how she remembers it. I stood frozen for a second. My fingers were stiff, aching, but I couldn't feel them, and when I started walking, the ache in my chest was sharper than the cold. It took me a moment to realize nothing mattered anymore. No warm bed, no loving dad, no home. Nothing. I walked. Just walked. It didn't matter where. It was better than standing still. The cold didn't seem to care that I was already numb. It wrapped around me like a second skin, thick and suffocating. My feet dragged, the crunch of snow underneath too loud, too harsh in the quiet of the streets. I didn't have a plan, didn't know where I was going. I just kept moving. I was 3 blocks away from the house when I saw him. He didn't yell or make a scene. He just stepped out from the shadow of a dumpster, his thick coat not quite enough to keep out the bite of the wind. "Hey," he said, voice rough, but there was no suspicion in his tone. Just calm, like he expected me. I stopped, just enough for him to keep his distance, but not enough to feel completely safe. "You're gonna freeze out here," he added. His eyes were sharp, like he saw something about me that I hadn't even realized yet. I could have kept walking, I could have ignored him, but something about the way he stood there, steady and unafraid, made my legs feel like they might collapse. He didn't move closer, but the space between us was still full of tension, something I couldn't quite name. "Get in the car," he said, gesturing down the street. "I'm not here to cause trouble." Something about the way he said that made me believe him, even though I didn't know why. His car was an old station wagon, a bit battered, but the heater worked. He didn't ask questions, just turned the heat up and let me sit in silence. The sound of the engine a soft hum in the background. The warmth felt strange, like I didn't deserve it, but I was too cold to question it. "So," he said after a while, voice quieter now. "What's your name?" "Leah," I answered, trying to focus on the car's hum instead of the guilt eating at me. "Victor," he replied, with a small nod. He didn't ask about my story, didn't pry. He just kept driving. Victor dropped me off at a small diner on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just a neon sign flickering in the dark. The kind of place that felt like it belonged to no one and everyone at the same time. The warmth inside felt like a relief I didn't deserve. I took a booth by the window, the sounds of a 24-hour coffee pot filling the space. I wasn't hungry, but I could have used something to do with my hands. Victor slid into the seat across from me, setting a tablet down between us. He didn't say anything at first, just let the moment sit there. I couldn't look at the screen. Not yet. "Watch this," he finally said. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like he already knew what was coming. I shifted in my seat, eyes glued to the tablet screen as he pressed play. At first, I didn't get it. It was just a black and white video of a shed, a night camera, maybe picking up faint figures and shadows. Then it hit me. The timestamp. It was right after I was kicked out. A figure walked into frame, moving with purpose. It was Tanner, My stepbrother. I didn't have to see his face to know it was him. He carried something shovel or tool and started shoveling snow. It wasn't clearing the path. He started packing it against the door, layer after layer of wet snow. The video zoomed in, showing how he pressed it down hard, turning it into an ice wall. Why? My voice was barely above a whisper. Victor's gaze was steady. To make sure you wouldn't get out. I leaned back, stunned. Tanner wasn't just trying to scare me. He wanted me gone. Completely gone. I stared at the screen long after the video ended. My mind was racing, but there was no more room for disbelief. Everything clicked into place, the cold, the door, the way Tanner had smiled as it all happened. The truth was uglier than I could have imagined. Victor sat there, quiet, letting me process it all. I wanted to say something, but my throat felt tight. What could I even say to that my stepbrother had tried to kill me? For money. For a piece of a life that wasn't even his. Finally, I broke the silence. He's not just my family, is he? I wasn't asking Victor. I was asking myself. He's part of the plan. Victor didn't flinch. Your dad and Veronica, they're all in on it. They needed you out of the way for the inheritance. But they didn't want to just kick you out. They wanted to make sure you couldn't come back. I looked down at my hands, knuckles white where I was gripping the edge of the table. A slow burn spread through my chest, hotter than I expected. Anger. But not the kind I'd been expecting. Not the kind that made me shout or cry. This was cold, calculated. Then I'll make sure they can't come back for me. Victor leaned forward, his elbows on the table. He didn't smile, but something in his face shifted. You've got your grandfather's trust fund. That's your weapon. We can freeze everything, lock them out, use the law to take it all back. The thought of using legal papers to take down my family felt strange. I had never been the one in charge. I had always been the one who had to make do, the one who tried to keep the peace. But peace hadn't saved me. I'm not going to just stand here and let them destroy everything, I said, more to myself than to him. I'm going to make sure they regret it. Victor didn't answer. He just nodded. It felt like I'd crossed some line. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of what came next. The knock on my apartment door came as a surprise, even though I'd known it was coming. I didn't have to check the peephole to know it was him, Caleb. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me before I even opened the door. When I did, he looked different, older, more worn out than I remembered. His eyes were tired, bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. His coat wasn't enough to fight the cold, his hands shaking in the frozen air. He stood there, looking at me, waiting. I need to talk to you, he said, voice cracking. I didn't move. I didn't step back to invite him in. I just stared at him, trying to figure out what he wanted from me now. Please, Leah, just let me in. I felt my chest tighten, the air thick between us. There was so much I wanted to say, but I couldn't find the words. I just shook my head and stepped aside. Not enough to let him in, but enough for him to see the truth of the situation. You've already lost everything, I said, barely above a whisper. You have nothing left. Dad. He looked past me, his face crumbling. I'm your father. Leah, you have to understand. Understand what I interrupted, that you chose peace over my survival. The silence between us stretched out, heavy and suffocating. He opened his mouth again, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single key, the one to the shed. Take it, I said, holding it out to him. You wanted me gone. Now you can keep it that way. His hand shook when he reached for it. Caleb left with the key in his hand. His shoulders slumped like the weight of the world had fallen on him. But I didn't feel any relief. If anything, the room felt colder, emptier, the silence too loud. I closed the door softly behind me and leaned against it, trying to breathe. My mind was spinning. but nothing felt real. How was it even possible for a father to turn his back like that? Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. When I picked up, her voice was unmistakable. Veronica. Her tone was smooth, but I could hear the edge beneath it. You've made a big mistake. Leah, she said, come back home. Sign the papers, or the cold won't be the only thing hurting you. I felt my heart drop. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. Not with Veronica. She wasn't going to let go that easily. You've already lost, I muttered into the phone, steadying myself. I'm not coming back. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, it was colder than the air outside. I hope you're ready for what's coming. She hung up without another word. I stood there, phone still in my hand, the weight of her threat sinking in. She was desperate, but that didn't scare me, not anymore. I looked out the window at the quiet city below. It wasn't just about money anymore. This was about taking my life back, and I wasn't going to stop. The morning after the call from Veronica, I was at the bank. I didn't want to be there. My hands felt cold, clammy. But I had a job to do, a job I'd never thought I'd be doing. Victor had been the one to push me into it. He kept saying the same thing, this is your life, your fight. It made sense, but it also terrified me, standing in front of a desk in a sterile bank lobby, filling out paperwork that would change everything. How could I be ready for this, the senior trustee? Mr. Henderson was a man with a carefully put-together look. His gray suit and glasses told me everything I needed to know. He was business. He didn't smile, didn't offer me small talk. His first words to me were all business, but somehow they felt like a lifeline. Ms. Hawthorne, he said, looking up from the paperwork. I've reviewed everything. You're the rightful beneficiary. Everything is in order. I nodded, but the words didn't quite sink in. It still felt like someone else's life I was stepping into, not mine. He laid the documents out in front of me, pages upon pages, trust fund documents, asset freezes, and signatures. My hand hovered over the paper for a second. What if I made a mistake? What if I was missing something but I didn't stop? I signed. The sound of the pen on paper felt final. This was happening. As I signed each sheet, it was like shedding a layer of the past, layer by layer. I wasn't just claiming my inheritance. I was claiming my independence. Victor stood beside me, quiet as always, but I could feel the weight of his support. There was no going back now. The hard part was over. Well, that's done, I said softly, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. Victor finally spoke, his voice steady. No turning back. I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of relief. It was a smile of determination. I was done being anyone's victim. It was almost too quiet when I opened the door. I'd known Caleb would be here, but when I saw him standing there, I didn't feel anything I thought I would. No anger, no relief. Just an emptiness that hadn't been there before. He looked rough. His hair was messier than usual, his eyes tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, his hands hanging limp at his sides. I'm sorry, he finally whispered, like it was supposed to mean something. I didn't know it would go this far. Leah, I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel anything. I just stepped aside, not letting him in, but enough for him to see that I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him. You don't get to apologize now. Dad, I said, my voice steady. Not after what you've done. He flinched, but I couldn't bring myself to care. He'd made his choice long ago. His peace. My destruction. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the key to the shed. The shed. The place where everything started and everything ended. Take it, I said, holding it out to him. You wanted me gone. Now you can keep it that way." He hesitated, staring at the key like it was some kind of weapon. But in the end, he took it. His hand shook as he grabbed it. "I'm your father," he said quietly, but there was no force in his words anymore. No command, just the weight of his failure. I didn't look at him as he walked away. I didn't need to. This was the end. I'd never go back. The apartment felt small, but in a way, it was perfect. There was no cold creeping in through cracks, no empty rooms echoing with silence, just warmth, real warmth. I sat by the window, watching the sun rise, the light slowly filling the space. Everything looked different now. The world outside was still frozen, but inside, I felt lighter. The weight of what had happened, of everything I'd lost, was still there, but it didn't feel like it was on me anymore. I could hear Chloe in the kitchen, the quiet sound of her stirring something in a pot. The smell of rosemary and thyme drifted over. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until I caught the scent. It felt normal, safe. Victor had already left for the day. He wasn't the type to stick around, and I appreciated that. But I knew he'd be back when I needed him. He always came through. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. The family I'd fought so hard for, the family I thought I needed, wasn't mine anymore, and it was okay. I had something better now. I didn't need their approval or their love. I had myself, and I had people who truly cared. Maybe that's what it took to finally be free, letting go of everything you thought mattered and realizing, somewhere along the way, you were the one holding all the power. This was my life now. I was in control, and that was enough. This was Leah Hawthorne's moment, not as the daughter, but as the person who learned how to stand alone and to rise above the ashes of a broken family. It's not always about revenge. Sometimes it's about taking back your own peace,